Well, hey, this is Josh with What's on Disney Plus, and I am thrilled to have two guests here today with us who are from toughpigs.com. And of course, you know, Roger is our normal host out of the United Kingdom, and he and James will be back here soon. But I wanted to do a special podcast episode celebrating the release of The Muppet Show. And who better to talk about it than these guys who are some of the Muppets super fans. So Ryan is, I know, with us from New York City.
Hello.
And Anthony is coming in from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Hi, everyone.
So and I love these guys. Their podcast, Moving Right Along, is just tremendous. They actually review Muppet films like 2 or 3 minutes at a time. And
2 minutes at a time.
It's just incredible, to have that level of detail, like almost like an audio commentary on the film as they go along. So these are real super fans here. As I understand it, the site has essentially reviewed, I believe, all 120 episodes of the show. Is that right, Ryan?
Almost. We started doing this project a couple of years ago called The Muppet Show 40 Years Later on the 40th anniversary of the show's premiere. And we've tried to review every episode on the 40th anniversary of when it first aired in the United States. So yeah, we're coming toward the end of the series at this point.
Really remarkable. And they have, of course, a whole team of writers at toughpigs.com that they work with. And I'd love to hear more about the site. And just to explain to folks, of course, that this is the first time that the Muppet Show will be available, for us all freely to enjoy. So I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit in terms of some of the previous, VHS incarnations of the show. And, it's all been piecemeal up to this point. And as far as we know, this will be all 120 episodes that are now coming to Disney Plus on February 19th. Have y'all heard anything differently, by the way, in terms of if it's all 120 and if any segments will be missing?
Okay. We haven't heard anything official. We did see, if you look on the Disney Plus app, if you look up The Muppet Show, and if you go to, I think it's details, there is a disclaimer now that says, some of these episodes contain outdated cultural depictions. These depictions were wrong then and they're wrong today. We present them to learn from them. That sort of thing. Which to me suggests that some of those more problematic episodes, which certainly do exist, will be included, right? I think they wouldn't have that disclaimer up if they were planning to take down certain episodes or certain sketches,
That's a really good, good indication, of course. Well, I don't want to rush us too quickly into the show itself, but would love to hear about the site and how it started, how long y'all been with it, maybe even for each of you guys, your favorite Disney film, because this is obviously a bunch of Disney fans that you're talking to, and I'm sure they'd be curious about what Disney film particularly you guys see as your favorite. Anthony?
Sure. So are we starting with Disney film?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So honestly, I spent a long time thinking about this, and I thought about Beauty and the Beast, Emperor's New Groove. I think Tarzan is kind of a dark horse fave, but in the end, I have to go with Bambi, which I think what is it? It's like 69 minutes long, and it's everything that can happen to a deer in his lifetime, just compressed into this gorgeous, perfect little hour and change. It's funny, it's sweet, it's heartbreaking. My wife and I walked into Love Is the Song at our wedding, which was the only thing I wanted to suggest for the ceremony itself, was to do Love Is the Song, because I'd always wanted that, because it's my favorite. I just love it.
And Ryan, for you, and you can also maybe start us in on the question of how your involvement with the site.
Sure. So when you say favorite Disney film, you do immediately think of the animated ones. So the one that I watched over and over again as a kid was Robin Hood, which I realize is not like peak animated Disney, but I still have a lot of affection for it. And then The Little Mermaid too is another, that's way up there for me.
I feel like the thing about Robin Hood is that you either really love it or you really hate it, right? I feel like there's no Disney fan who is lukewarm on Robin Hood. I love it too.
Well, yeah, I would say I really love it while acknowledging that it's not one of their best. I don't know which category that fits in.
Yeah, it's what we call the Bronze Age of Disney. That era from Walt dying to them really starting back up with Oliver and Company into the kind of the the Renaissance. But it's better than, frankly, the other ones in that era, which are Aristocats and some others. but it certainly has its fan base. So and I think they're working on a live action of that one too. You know, it's like everybody's getting a live action.
I'm sure. Yeah.
At any rate,
I got the perfect casting for it: Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, Claude Rains.
Wait a minute, you're telling me they're making a live action adaptation of Robin Hood?
Yes, the animated. My gosh. At any rate, well, tell us about toughpigs.com, how long you guys have been with it, and just even your Muppet fandom. Like, you know, I know it's kind of a Gen X, you know, brand in a sense. People who were around for the original airing. I wasn't. I'm more millennial. But how did you guys kind of get into Muppet fandom?
Well, I think the hopefully short version is Tough Pigs was started in 2001 by our friend Danny Horn, who ran the site completely by himself for the first few years. And then at the beginning of 2007, our friend Joe Hennis and myself took over as basically the co-owners of the site. And then Anthony was one of our early contributors who would join us in writing stuff regularly for the site. And now we have a whole team of contributors, which is really great. So we do reviews and commentary and news and just anything that we feel like saying about the Muppet characters and the Sesame Street characters and the Jim Henson Company characters.
It's tremendous. And it is a great resource for folks. I do hope folks check it out. You guys have done several podcasts now on different themes and focus to them. And it's, you know, it's something that Muppet fans are aware of worldwide. So kudos to you on your work. When you think about the show, Muppet Show, and just kind of to enter this conversation about such a, you know, amazing landmark television show.
I just realized I didn't answer the part about getting into the Muppets.
Oh yeah, please.
Which I think like most people in our age range, it started with Sesame Street for me. Like that, those are some of my earliest TV memories, and then I just kind of ended up following everything the Muppets ever did as I continued to grow up. And my parents were really good about helping me become a Muppet nerd because they basically, everything that was on TV with the Muppets, they would tape it and they gave me, you know, books and merchandise and everything. So that's my story.
Anthony, how about you in terms of Muppet fandom?
Similar. I mean, I was a fan as a kid, of course. I loved Sesame Street. I loved the Muppet Show, the Muppet Show was rerun on Nickelodeon in the early 90s. That was the first time I saw it.
It was very exciting.
But I didn't get Nickelodeon, so we could only watch it at my grandma's house. So it was like an exciting thing about visiting my grandma was we got to watch the Muppet Show. But there's a book from 1993 called Jim Henson, The Works by Christopher Finch. And I got that book. I bought it at B. Dalton in the mall when I was 12. And I remember reading that book and just thinking, I have to see every single thing they mention in this.
Yeah.
This is like, Jim Henson is the greatest genius of all time. I have to see Hey Cinderella from 1970 or whatever, you know? And then I've kind of spent the last 20 plus years doing that.
Yeah, the amazing thing is I feel like we've pretty much seen most of the stuff that is written about in that book.
Yeah, right. And now, I mean, with, you know, so much of it is online or, you know, in the old days, we used to do tape trading.
Right.
You know, Muppet fans would dub copies of old obscure specials. That's actually how Ryan and I kind of became friends, was doing a tape trade in about the year 2000 when I was in high school and Ryan was in college.
Yeah, and back then we could only dream of seeing stuff like the LaChoy Dragon commercials from the 60s, but now I'm pretty sure they're on YouTube, so.
Yeah, it is nice, and it's good that there are so many things on YouTube. Of course, those of us who are part of what's on Disney Plus, we're always calling for, you know, the full release of all the back catalog of stuff. And I mean, according to what we know, Disney owns a ton of these old specials with the core Muppet characters. So, you know, we're going to keep pressing forward. This is really sort of people who are kind of involved in this kind of open the vault, you know, kind of movement and trying to get Disney to open, you know, give us more of the classics. This is certainly the biggest victory so far, you know, here, you know, about 14 months into the site, into, you know, Disney Plus's existence, to get all 5 seasons of the Muppet Show in one fell swoop. I didn't expect that. I'm pretty excited that it's all coming. And like we say, presumably every episode, but you know, I think one of the best ways for people to think about the show and to understand what a big deal it is to think about one episode that just, you know, you as a viewer made you laugh as never before. I think for me, like the Dom DeLuise episode, and I caught, I think, some of these when it was VHS, you know, in the 90s. I think Time Life put out, you know, maybe a couple dozen episodes or so. my family got a hold of those, and but the Dom DeLuise episode in the second season, I just thought, you know what, I have never seen comedy like this. I laughed so hard. The whole like Shepherd's Institute of Animal Protection with him,
Right.
with the monsters and trying to feed them all, and I mean, it's just the comic timing of it, the unexpected nature of it, and you don't even know how they're doing it with puppets. Like, these look like real characters. I was like, I am all in for this show. This is remarkable.
That one also has the sketch where he goes to the planet Kuzbane, and there are those aliens that popped out of the holes and go, myrtle it up.
That's right. What about for you guys? Like, was there a moment when you're like, okay, I know I am all in for this show, and in terms of one of the episodes of the Muppet Show, they're just classic?
Sure. So I'll go first. I was thinking about the Marty Feldman episode, which is from season 5, which is every once in a while they did theme episodes where the whole thing would be kind of a story. Story is not quite right for how loose these were, but there's a Robin Hood one with Lynn Redgrave. There's an Alice in Wonderland one with Brooke Shields. And I think best of all, there's a 1001 Arabian Nights with Marty Feldman, who listeners might know Marty Feldman best as Igor in Young Frankenstein. I think that's what he's best known for. So he has this very offbeat British sense of humor. And in this episode, there's a sketch called The Wright Brothers at Kitty Hawk, which is presented as part of the 1001 Arabian Nights. And it's starring Marty Feldman as Orville and Wilbur Wright, who he plays one person named Orville and Wilbur Wright because my mother wanted twins, identical twins, and that's why I look so much alike. And he comes into the patent office run by Sam the Eagle to patent the flying carpet. And it is such a crazy, weird, hilarious sketch. And the whole episode is full of great stuff, but that sketch in particular is just one of those things where it's like, this is perfection. This is what humanity's greatest achievement looks like. And that's one that it was on those Time Life VHSs that you mentioned, Josh.
Yeah.
But fifth season never came out on the complete series DVDs. There was no 4 and 5 season DVDs. So this will be the first time that one's been available since, 1999 or whenever those Time Life DVDs came out, 2000.
That's amazing. When I'm reminded of Frank Oz's description of the show as kind of abandon and lunacy, as kind of like what they're going for. And I just think that's such a perfect example of it. Like, that is so off the wall, but somehow it works in the show. Ryan, kind of what's like an episode that just sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, one that comes to mind is the Roy Clark episode. I know a lot of people are going to look at these episodes and they're going to be like, I don't know who this guest star is. Maybe I'll skip this one. But I do think people should watch all of these episodes for the Muppets and for the comedy and the music and everything. So in the Roy Clark episode, the Muppet Theater is on fire, and it's just, there's some really good Fozzie stuff in there. Fozzie is possibly my favorite Muppet character. So there's a number where the firefighters show up, but they just want to sing. They want to do a musical number. So the firefighters sing, "I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire," while Fozzie is going back and forth, like trying to put out the fire and evacuating people. He's trying to evacuate a chicken at one point, and then he stops in front of the singing firefighters and says, "I hope you're proud of yourselves. You made this chicken a nervous wreck." So it's just very silly.
It's too great. Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point there about watching every episode, and frankly, like you guys did a really good article on Tough Pigs about season 1 particularly. And I don't know who among the contributors did that one particularly.
Our friend Evan wrote that one, so shout out to him.
It was really well done, and it definitely expressed some things that I was thinking in the back of my head because, that first season particularly, it is very different than the rest of the show. And I would contend to probably, for people who are the casual fans especially, maybe they just know Muppets from the films, maybe they've seen them along the way, but never watched the show. I would say myself, skip season 1 at first. And, maybe you might want to catch the Rita Moreno episode at first. I mean, that's Emmy Award winning. Paul Williams, I think, is another season 1 highlight for sure. And I know I'm going to be watching, all of it because I'm a super fan. But, what would you say about season 1? And I would just say maybe, hey, let's, consider moving on to season 2 because we want to lose people because these are obscure guest stars, especially in season 1. And also, Of course, Miss Piggy doesn't really look and sound like the character that we know in several of the early episodes. The writing, of course, I mean, it went, I know it ultimately ended with Jerry Jewell, but could you talk about the evolution and why people may want to consider maybe skipping it if they're a casual fan?
Okay, I'll go. All right. So you mentioned Jerry Jewell. Jerry Jewell was the head writer of seasons 2 through 5 of the Muppet Show. The head writer of season 1 was a guy named Jack Burns, who he's been around forever. I mean, he had a comedy team called Burns and Schreiber, and not coincidentally, Avery Schreiber was a season 1 guest star on the Muppet Show. But his style of comedy is a lot more just pure joke based than Jerry Jewell. I think very gag driven, right? And I feel like, yes, the puppets do look different. Fozzie looks weird. Miss Piggy is sometimes played by Richard Hunt instead of Frank Oz, as you mentioned, Josh. And all of that is strange. But I think what is the weirdest thing is that there's not really any backstage stories like there would be later on. And there's not a lot of real heart. I feel like one of the things people want out of the Muppets is like this cast of characters who love putting on a show and love being together, kind of. And that season 1 does not have that. Like the backstage story will be something like, here's Fozzie trying to work up a joke called the telephone pole or whatever. So what's really missing is the idea that these characters love each other and love putting on a show. It's funny. I do think people will enjoy it once they get used to it, but I do think if you go into it first, like you say, Josh, it will just be, what is this? This is not what I remember. The Muppet Show is bad.
Yeah, I think there are hints of that heart. Like they sort of realize that could be a good idea for helping people come to know and love the characters. Like there are a few times where you have guest stars cheering up Muppets in that first season, but it's not quite the same. The characters just aren't as lovable. There's also a few characters, like Hilda comes to mind, who people might tune into the first season and just be like, who is this character who's in most of these episodes? Hilda the wardrobe mistress, who just disappeared after the first season.
And of course, the At the Dance segment as well was a big part of the show, and they obviously abandoned that. The houses, there were several
talking houses, yes, which we love, sort of ironically, I guess. But those talking house sketches are not great.
Yeah, and there's really not too many of them. There's only about 5 or 6, so it's not like they're doing talking houses every episode. But for listeners who don't know, the talking houses are, we see a row of houses, and one of them will say something like, "My son works in medicine."
Oh, is he a doctor?
No, a hospital.
That's it.
and that's what they're like. So like there's something very endearing about it, but I feel like you have to really love the Muppets to find it endearing, maybe, whereas that's not the case with like Gonzo or Fozzie, or even just some of the musical numbers or something.
Well, there's also stuff that's not there yet that people might be expecting to see. Like there is Muppet Labs with Bunsen Honeydew in the first season, but Beaker didn't show up until the second season, so it's just Bunsen and those. And also there's no pigs in space in the first season,
which is such a highlight of the whole show. So people are gonna love it. I'm really excited about where things are going. I would even recommend, tell me what you guys think of this, but like, for instance, my wife is really into Gene Kelly. I'm probably going to start her on maybe that episode just because, hey, she knows the performer. She's going to be all in for this. You can kind of jump around, right? Even if it's a season 5 or season 4 episode. I mean, it's not like there's necessarily continuity to worry about too much.
There's no continuity.
There's zero. I mean, like the most continuity is that every once in a while in the later seasons, they mention that the Muppet movie exists. That's about as continuity focused as it ever gets, but no, and I do think picking a performer that you already know you like, that you want to watch with the Muppets, you love Steve Martin or Madeline Kahn or Cloris Leachman. Elton John is wonderful. Cloris Leachman just passed away. She had an amazing body of work. Her Muppet Show episode is about the pigs taking over the Muppet Theater and hijacking the show for themselves. So we get to see different performers. Like Dave Goelz plays Kermit the Pig, Frank Oz plays the Swedish Pig, and so on. And so that episode is really fun. And also you get the bonus of watching the delightful Cloris Leachman with the Muppets.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I think people who maybe don't even know 70s actors, like Cloris Leachman or, but certain ones of these names, I mean, Johnny Cash, Paul Simon. I mean, there are some big names. You mentioned Elton John, of course. I mean, it's significant. Not only, I think, the caliber of performers they had on it, especially as you get into seasons, later ones, but the range as well. I mean, I was always struck by how they would do a gospel number, one episode with, say, Diana Ross or, Pearl Bailey or something, very, very soulful, and then moving into, some kind of Americana type thing, with Johnny Cash or, folk stuff with Paul Williams. It's just the range of styles in the show, musically, and even, of course, genre of the show is very different. Thoughts on that?
Well, you mentioned Pearl Bailey. And actually, within that episode, you mentioned the gospel number. My Soul is a Witness is the opening number. It's a full, everyone's wearing choir robes. It's like a full gospel number. Then she does this laid back, bluesy version of In the Good Old Summertime with Floyd backstage. And then the show ends with, supposed to be the jousting number from Camelot, but they couldn't get the rights. So it's a medley of different musical theater songs to enact a jousting number set in Arthurian times. So she gets to do Broadway show tunes and a laid back blues number and a rousing gospel spiritual song all in that episode. And of course that's Pearl Bailey, who's an amazing singer. But even within 1/2 hour, they're going to hit you with 3 very different musical styles sometimes. And that's part of the fun of the show is every few minutes, it's going to be something new. You never have time to get bored watching the Muppet Show. Even if you don't like one thing, there's going to be something else for you in just a couple of minutes.
Right. It is a variety show, and that definitely extends to the types of songs and everything. And yeah, they when they would have a current rock star on, like Alice Cooper, they would do hard rock. And then when they have these UK spots, which are these bits that they did because in England, TV shows are longer than they were here. So a lot of those are just these really old English music hall songs. So yeah, all kinds of songs.
It'll be interesting to see if those actually show up on Disney Plus. We just don't know.
We don't know. They were on the DVDs for seasons 1 through 3, which suggests to me that they probably will be included. I would think. I would be surprised.
I don't know why they wouldn't be. I mean, I guess we don't know 100% if all of the songs will be there, because that was one of the things that happened with those first 3 season DVD sets, is some of the songs were cut for music rights. But yeah, I wouldn't expect them to cut the UK spots.
Well, I will say, I think listeners may have seen Danny Boy by the Leprechaun Brothers, which is Animal, Swedish Chef, and Beaker. 3 characters who can't really talk, of course.
They get posted on social media every
right.
St. Patrick's Day.
Every St. Patrick's Day, right. And it's one of the most famous bits, I think, from the Muppet Show. That's a UK spot.
Right.
That did not air on the show in the US in 1980. So, at this point, I feel like it's all just the Muppet Show. So hopefully it'll be included. I'll be very sad if it's not.
I hope that's the case. Yeah. And so here's a little bit of tidbit of info. I learned in dialogue with Brian J. Jones, who I know we all appreciate as Jim Henson's biographer. And maybe you guys have heard some other things as well. So I'd love to know if you have heard more. But he mentioned, and he said he couldn't even remember who he talked with over at, if it was the Jim Henson Company or somebody involved in archiving this material. But he said there was a real surprise that they ran into some original ITV tapes, that were preserved that are far better than the transfers that were done for VHS and DVD. And this was only in the last couple of years.
Oh, awesome.
He said, so his understanding is that this will be, and you can see it honestly, I think, in that, and even just the theme song that you see they've already posted. Obviously it's in the original aspect ratio. There were people who were concerned about that they were gonna crop it or something, which would have been really concerning. But my understanding is that the source elements are actually really crisp and quality. And we're going to be surprised that it may actually top what you saw on the DVD, I would imagine. So have y'all heard anything more about kind of quality and what we can expect?
Nothing more than what you just said. I mean, it's really exciting. I can't wait to see how it looks on our TVs.
And it's possible if they got those up to a certain level, maybe the spots, etc., are going to have to come at a later date if they didn't have time or they didn't have the source elements yet at that level. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. We'll
just a thought, but I really hope we're looking at unedited episodes that are not going to have a bunch of musical numbers cut. That obviously is going to disappoint folks. Something you brought up, Ryan, earlier is about the behind the scenes nature of the show. I think people think of it as a variety show, of course, but so much of the action is backstage, and that's the charm of it. Is it's almost like you might say maybe like a 30 Rock or Dick Van Dyke Show, where they're, working to put on a show. It's probably an interesting comparison there, but could you talk about that kind of dual nature of the show a little bit, where they're on stage, but they're also backstage, so much of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because I think on the Dick Van Dyke Show and even 30 Rock, you didn't really see much of the show that they were making. Those were about about characters who were making a show. But yeah, the Muppet Show is essentially two shows in one, because it's the variety show that they're doing on stage, and then also the characters backstage and the various trials and tribulations as they desperately try to make the variety show that you're seeing on stage. And so there's sometimes where the reality sort of blurs, like where they might do a musical number backstage or in a dressing room, and you hear the audience laugh track reacting to it or applauding, and then you're kind of, wait a minute, can the audience see into the dressing room?
Well, that's the thing, is that the audience is always there. Like, that's one of the things that makes the Muppet Show so surreal. Right. Is that, yes, it takes place in the theater. They have an audience of Muppets that we see sometimes, but the laugh track is always there, no matter where they are, backstage, in the dressing room. So like, and even in season 5, in the Chris Langham episode, one of the last episodes, they finally have Statler and Waldorf say something like, "Do you ever notice there are these long stretches when there's nothing on stage?" Which is great.
It's such an in-joke. That's so great. Well, one thing, of course, I mean, we're dealing with, when you talk about Disney Plus, families at a number of different places in terms of, maybe their kids are very young, and some are like, okay, this is obviously a landmark in family entertainment. I think we would all agree with that. And probably we have, many of us young kids who enjoy this. But at the same time, it's interesting that Henson had this view about puppets kind of being not just for kids. And, that there maybe is a little bit of mature humor in the show at times. You mentioned, Ryan, a guest like Alice Cooper, obviously a little edgy. He's kind of a shock rocker. You might say the same about, for instance, Raquel Welch, kind of a, very much a, sex symbol of the time. What would you say about kind of this idea of, this is not Sesame Street? I know the pilot episode itself is rather interesting, titled Sex and Violence. Right. Could you talk about kind of Henson's view of, going beyond just kind of kiddie entertainment with this?
Well, the Alice Cooper episode you mentioned, that the backstage storyline involves Alice Cooper trying to convince the Muppets to sell their souls to the devil. So, I mean, it's all done in a very funny, lighthearted way. But yeah, I guess, I don't want to be one of those people who complains like, kids aren't allowed to watch anything like we were allowed to watch now. But I guess parents are definitely more sensitive now than they used to be. The show was, we like to talk about how Jim Henson always wanted the Muppets to be for it wasn't for kids, it was also for adults. But it was really for the whole family, which means there is stuff that mostly adults would enjoy. And there's also stuff that, everyone can enjoy, including the kids. But yeah, there is some interesting stuff, like I guess Raquel Welch in that episode calls Fozzie sexational. It'll be interesting to see the people on Twitter when they figure that one out. And yeah, just stuff like Muppets smoking and drinking occasionally.
Right. Well, we talked about the UK spots earlier. Those sometimes had a little more adult humor is what, like, I always think about the John Cleese episode, which is, I think, one that a lot of people will go for. So, John Cleese from Monty Python, obviously a very beloved figure in comedy still. The UK sketch in that episode has Miss Piggy as a pregnant bride singing Waiting at the Church, which is like not a thing that you expect to see on the Muppet Show, I don't think, but no. And they never say it out loud. She just is visibly pregnant and singing, wearing a wedding dress, and singing about waiting at the church, right?
Yeah, there's some things that I think will catch people by surprise if in fact everything is uncut.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just say, for parents, hey, preview it if you're concerned about anything. I think obviously it is a landmark show.
Or just don't worry about it because it's still the Muppets.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
I mean, we all know that there is such it's just that interesting mix of like innocence and edginess that, I think Henson was always trying to achieve in his entertainment. And so much, obviously, with Sesame Street, 7 years prior to this, when it premiered, it established almost, okay, the Muppets are this kiddie brand or something. And, and he was always pushing away from that. And so obviously he shopped then the Muppet Show out to networks with this pilot episode called Sex and Violence, which is interesting in and of itself. I don't know if that'll be part of this release. Probably not, I'd imagine. Maybe as a bonus. Hopefully in the future, we'll see it. But, I think it's just something for parents to be aware of. We don't want some kind of, take down this episode or that one, kind of a movement at all. We want to see these uncut as they originally aired, in their kind of, fullness of what was broadcast. Well, kind of as we close out here, because I think everyone's very excited about this new show, and hopefully we'll be able to talk more about it as time goes on, and people now have gotten to react, and we'll see which ones really are ones that kind of are discussed a lot on social media. But when you think about where they went by the fifth season, I mean, this is a show that obviously is really stands apart in the annals of TV history, and I think that it's you almost get to the level where it's essentially a Muppet film every week. By that point, I mean, the sets are so elaborate, the gags are so elaborate. The Roger Moore episode comes to mind. What they were doing in that episode. Why would you guys say that this is a show that really stands the test of time, and why is it one that people should really take time to binge watch and check out in full? I guess if you want to start first, Ryan.
I think part of it is because it did really appeal to everyone. Adults were watching it, families were watching it together. At one point, it was the most widely syndicated show in the world. I think Baywatch at some point surpassed the record, but the Muppet Show got there first. And yeah, just every kind of entertainment and these characters that are just so lovable all in this half-hour package. So it's just like, it's pure entertainment. And the Muppet Show was kind of a culmination of everything Jim Henson wanted to do up to that point, and then he got to do it.
Right. Well, and I think we mentioned earlier that like there's always, I said earlier that there's always something new coming along every few minutes. And I think that's a huge part of the key to why it's still so entertaining. Like, I think people who don't want to watch older TV shows often think that they are slow paced or boring or something. And the Muppet Show is not ever slow paced. Obviously it stars the Muppets, but also like it just packs as many jokes, songs, characters into 25 minutes as it can. And at the end of those 25 minutes, it's just, you've just been smiling, laughing the whole time.
Even if there's a song that you're not really familiar with, if you wait a couple minutes, you'll get the Swedish Chef.
Right, exactly. Like there's just always so much that I think if people go into it expecting, the Muppet movie, they might be thrown, like we talked about, season 1 is kind of weird. But if people go into it just wanting to see the Muppets, they're gonna see it. They're gonna get the jokes, the songs that they love, and it's a joy every time.
That's so true. I think of the Harry Belafonte episode. Just some amazing soaring numbers in that. I mean, Turn the World Around. The whole Earth song that he does is just like, wow. Like this is, how did this ever get on TV? This is amazing.
Right.
The level of artistry that's reflected in this.
Well, and what's like that episode's a perfect example because, like you say, it ends with that just soaring, gorgeous number. It also starts with Kermit reading Fozzie's misspelled script. Leggies and Jenglefins, welcome again, tie the Muppelshocks, right? So it's like, it has everything. It's so good. And Harry does the Banana Boat song, which is delightful.
It really is. Well, this has been great, guys. We've got to kind of wrap it up here, but this has been tremendous. Thank you so much. The guys from toughpigs.com, do check out the site and their podcasts. And, this has been, of course, What's on Disney Plus. You can find us on whatsondisneyplus.com and keep listening for future episodes here. And, I'm Josh, and of course, be watching for Roger, our host. Thank you guys so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much, Josh.
Guys.